Hello World. On behalf of the Fab Foundation and the Center for Bits and Atoms at MIT, I'm going to welcome you to the day 2 of FABxLive. Yesterday, we had a terrific session that focused on some of the highlights of great work happening around the world in terms of COVID-19 response. And in addition to being inspiring, I was also pretty envious of Joseph Prucha's open source tattoo. So if you missed that, go back and watch the video because it's really fun. But there were also terrific workshops and activities all day. It was really fun, and I think it was really interesting. And I think today is going to be equally as interesting and fun. So welcome. I'd like to remind you before we sort of dive in to our Community Action Day that at the end of the symposium, we will take a short break and then stick around because we have Fabercise and we have the Fabworld Roundup, which is really fun and interesting. And that'll be followed by sponsor and partner activities, Chevron, Dassault Systems, SolidWorks, and Brother. And then we'll end the day again with terrific workshops and activities around the world. So stick with us, please. So today, I'm going to dive in. We're going to talk about Fab community, right? So during COVID-19, we sorry, I'm going to share my screen, Fran, if you don't mind. So during COVID-19, the Fab Lab network and the maker spaces around the world and tech shops, all of them really came to the rescue. So we experienced this spectacular failure of large-scale manufacturing and supply chains, and the response on the part of Fab Labs and maker spaces across the world was just, it was of the moment, and it was very inspiring, and it was a real example of what we can do as a community, right? How we not only support our communities, but we take our community and activate it in support of whatever the challenge is, or can do that. This is our potential. This is what we've been talking about for years. So, we started to see this happening in the media. You see up top here, there's an image from the Makers Asylum in Mumbai, where they made 1 million masks in like less than 2 months. And if you look at this great a dashboard from the open source medical supply group, it's sort of the global production from maker spaces and Fab Labs around the world. There were more than 15 million by the beginning of June, I think. 15 million supplies, in essence, PPE supplies. That's pretty extraordinary for a community that really is about innovation and not so much about manufacturing. Okay, sorry about that. I'm not sharing my screen. Okay, that's right. Sorry, gang. Hold on just a second. I want you to see this, if I can. All right. There we go. With apologies. All right. Now we're back on track here. So anyway, so this is the dashboard I'm talking about from OSMS that shows that we had like 15 million supplies, PPE supplies that were manufactured around the world in a couple of months. And that's pretty extraordinary, right? So that's what they've been tracking. We decided to do our own little survey, and we surveyed about 65 Fab Labs across the world, and we had 75% of them. These were Fab Labs that participate in our Fab Academy program, so we know that they've got a very good technical base in terms of the technology, as well as the sort of knowledge to use that technology and to innovate. And the 5 takeaways were pretty interesting, and you won't be surprised, but I want to bring them up here because I think they're important. Most of the PPE that they made was supplied to local organizations, so local hospitals, local fire departments, local police, doctors, community organizations. So it was really very local. Most of the PPE and this is not great, was supplied either for free or at cost, right? At the cost of materials, not the cost of labor, not the cost of overhead, just the cost of materials. Not very sustainable, but boy, was that a great response, for our communities, because they really needed what we had to offer. Most of the PPE was not approved at a national, a national scale like the Federal Drug Administration. It was very much locally approved by hospitals and by healthcare providers. Most of the labs didn't ship their materials. They actually delivered by car, by foot, whatever. They delivered in person. So they really stepped up to the plate and did what was needed. And most of the labs supplied PPE, when the manufacturers and the supply chains just couldn't. And so they really filled a very important and needed void. And so, so I think those are important lessons for us to remember, and they sort of provide an opportunity, right? It was remarkable the way that we came together and we leveraged our global knowledge and our infrastructure. And so I would ask, is this distributed manufacturing? Kind of, it is. I mean, it's certainly coordinated manufacturing, because we all talk to each other and coordinated the best designs. Is this distributed collective action? I think so, absolutely. And I think this points towards extraordinary opportunities in the future. So as I was thinking about this session, I was inspired by an article in the New Yorker by Gia Tolentino. And she brought up these two authors who are pretty interesting. So Rebecca Solnit, she's the author of A Paradise Built in Hell. And this is about how communities, really great solutions in communities arise in disasters. And she really believes that systemic change comes from a disaster, but that systemic change can be political, it can be economic, social, ecological, all of that. And then she and it's very of the moment, I think, her work. She's not only an environmentalist, but she's a human rights activist. So at any rate, and then Peter Kropotkin, and he is from like 1902. He was a prince in Russia, and he's one of the first people that ever came up with this idea of mutual aid. And so what's really interesting is charity is really about providing a social service and kind of putting trying to help the symptoms. But what mutual aid is about, and it kind of like, I don't think it's the model necessarily for us, but it's a model we should think about. It's really about getting at the root problems, right? And so I feel like we have the opportunity now to get at our root problems. So with that said, I would like to, I'd like to start for you to think about our panel today. These next few hours, we're going to hear from different protagonists in the COVID-19 response, right? And each one of them has embraced organizations and community in a different way and responded in a different way. And all of these are really, really good stories. And they each give us a glimpse into maybe a possible pathway into a more sustainable future and a more equitable future. And so with that, I'd like to introduce Peter Raymond. We are delighted to have you today. Peter is the CEO, and of SolveOX and the principal of the New Bureau. And New Bureau is really interesting. They're taking global challenges and taking global mind share and trying to solve these global challenges. So Peter works he's an expert in IoT and systems design, adaptive education, and emerging technologies. He works across education, environment, technology, space, renewable energy. Oh my God, it's like, you're amazing, Peter. And what his organization does is they come up with really innovative strategies for not only like the Fortune 500 companies, but they also come up for nonprofits and communities. So Peter, with that, please take it away. We'd be delighted to hear from you.
Thanks, Sherry, and thanks for having me, everyone. We sit in a really interesting moment in time. We're here in the middle of the year 2020. 2020 was always looked as the future. If you go back to kind of mid-century sci-fi, 2020 was that moment that everything was supposed to have arrived. And arrived it did. And it showed up in a way that I don't think anybody really expected it to, in the form of momentum that we had built in most parts of our daily lives living in this future state. We go to work, we go to school, we use our supercomputer in our pocket to push a button for a vehicle to arrive that we hop in and hop out of without any issues, thoughts of insurance, car payments. Otherwise, we maybe hop on the subway, we get in a tin can, shoot 3,000 miles across the sky and land safely, uneventfully. And all of a sudden, it all changed. As Sherry said, we've got a group called the New Bureau. I'm just going to share my screen right now, just to make sure this comes up. And what we do, we have a global network of amazing individuals and organizations. And I found within problem solving, which has been pretty much my life's work, I grew up as a frustrated kid in school. So I ended up dropping out of high school and college on the same day and went into my life in media and broadcast and overall technology and problem solving. I built the New Bureau a few years ago as a network to bring together these, what I found is very disparate worlds. You had the interesting kind of technology and innovation space, you had the maker space, you had the artist space, you had the Silicon Valley tech scene, you had Wall Street, you had DC and governments, you had the UN as a global overseer, you had then regional and countries all over with different pockets and versions of this. But what I always found as a gap was the lone individual who often has an amazing idea, amazing ties into their community, had no real access to the global leadership to be able to move those ideas into action and build accountability around that. So we started working with the UN, we worked in supply chain, we've worked with IBM, we've worked with Microsoft, built a couple of companies, I've sold a couple of companies, all in social impact. And through all of this, it really brought me into a couple distinct areas of the health of the planet and its inhabitants. And that's really what we do. We focus on do well by doing good and take care of the planet and the things that live on it. We found that that's a good business model. When you kill your customers, that doesn't do very well for bottom line. So social impact for me goes directly into a Wall Street model, a policy model, and also an innovation and invention model. So what we do is we look at, if we have an understanding of a community who's got really great ideas and they're maybe not having the ability to have access to resources, can we connect those? Can we put a framework together so there's accountability and a process? Can we keep the free-flowing idea and collaboration of smaller community engagements with the rigor and process needed in large-scale institutions? Whether we love or hate big institutions, there's a way to manage 700,000 people or 1 million people in an organization. It's a tough thing to do. It's a tough thing to make those paychecks roll every single week or every single month. The organizational side of these large institutions creates an inertia often that we look at as not innovative or not able to understand the needs of a population. I look at it a little differently, is that they have massive resources and areas of accountability that we can all tap into. So I'm going to go back in time a little bit, and I'm going to go to the end of last year. We have an internal platform we built called Claim8. It's a global intelligence and context engine. It helps us understand what's going on in the world, what are the non-obvious connections, and how can we get ahead of problem sets and understand what their solutions can be that can help solve problems at scale. So I'm going to go through a bit of a timeline. If anybody wants to take a look at this, this is available at claim-8.com, claim-8.com. And in the late part of 2019, we were using some of our tools to look for vector-based diseases. I personally was very interested in it. I had worked with the Gates Foundation about 14 years ago when I first really got turned on to what the idea of population health can really look like at scale, the things we should think about. I had done some work in northern Rwanda and southern Sudan over the years. So the idea of what a virus or any kind of outbreak could be to a population, understanding that at a place that isn't necessarily the common or public knowledge around that was something kind of deep to my personal interest. As we do a lot of work in climate, the reason we were looking at these vector-based diseases is as climate changes, as temperature and humidity changes, so do the species on Earth change. They change their location, they change their proximity into other species, and you can have things that didn't exist in a certain area show up in that area very quickly. One example would be looking at Zika or other subtropical disease from insects. As you look at what was an insect in Miami, all of a sudden becomes an insect that's now in North Carolina, which can become an insect that's now in Washington, D.C. When you move that kind of geography because of climate, and those insects, birds, bats, and humans all move around, you can have leaping of viruses and other disease states from two species. And we talk about that as a vector-based disease. So we were looking around the world for any signals on this, and in late 2019, saw a small signal coming out of China. It was loosely translated through Chinese social media to the old people plague. And the one thing that I found really fascinating was, because you see outbreaks happen often, outbreak often is defined as more than 2 cases at once in a singular area. So an outbreak doesn't have to be hundreds of thousands, just 2 or 3 cases. And you look at that trend. So we started looking at that. And the thing that I thought was fascinating was the imagery that I was seeing. One of the ones you can see on the screen behind the graphic, all the healthcare clinicians were in head to toe, either hazmat gear or full PPE, and every patient was intubated. That was unique. When you look at what happened with Ebola and, the imagery coming out of Ebola, where you see the head to toe hazmat, it gives you almost that apocalyptic sci-fi horror movie look of the contagion. These are real contagions. And if you understand how a contagion works, it basically is usually built on proximity. If people are close together, you're going to have an increased contagion. It's kind of simple in pandemiology. And where we are today, looking at how the world, different parts of countries and populations are treating this, these are the things I think you need to look at from early signal detection as a small community or a large government organization. So we see these signals, we start monitoring them. Some is loosely translated through Chinese social media, as I said. Other stuff we were finding on Reddit. We were looking at what this is. There's a lot of noise when you're looking at these signals. So you can't loop to conclusions, but you start paying attention. We started talking to some folks in the space, some vector-based disease specialists, and they wouldn't confirm or deny, but definitely noted that we had something, or we were onto something, and they were seeing something as well. We looked at that through December. We started building scenario models, and we built our first SEER model. You may have heard of SEER models. Susceptible, exposed, infected, and recovered. And we started building these productive models, saying, okay, there could be a global peak around May 20th. Remember, this is in 2019, December of 2019. And we started looking what this outbreak could look like over time. The thing that was interesting was seeing it jump from China to northern Italy. And we based that on the Northern Italy manufacturing sector and the Chinese manufacturing sector, and understanding those global trade routes. So if you look at pandemiology, it really is a supply chain, and it's a supply and demand of disease and hosts. So we looked at that, we put a couple things together and said, okay, if this really starts to populate with air travel, it's going to go from China into Central Europe, and then it's going to hit the US. Probably West Coast first, but New York's going to get hit pretty badly because of the type of environment it is. Close proximity of population, lots of air travel, 3 to 4 airports in close proximity. And if anybody's ridden the subway, everything is kind of gross. So you know what this looks like. As we started going through this is now going into January. World Health Organization announces on July 31st in the Western world, July 30th in the Eastern world, that there is something here. On January 7th, it's identified as 2019 nCoV, later to be called nCoV, the sequence turning into coronavirus, as defined as we know, the novel coronavirus 19. And as this is happening, we're seeing quick reactions. We're seeing South Korea, we're seeing Taiwan, we're seeing Japan, we're seeing China, and we're seeing what's happening in a population. And I thought this was the most interesting part. While pandemiology often looks at what's the R0 factor, how many people do we move the virus to through contagions, how long does it actually incubate, or how long is the patient exposed for, are they shedding virus or not, are they symptomatic or asymptomatic. I was really interested in the human behaviors and how policy works around the world. And how do you build a coupled model that can show you what actions do you take regardless of what the disease looks like to affect outcomes. And what we saw in the Chinese province where you had the outbreaks was a very strong lockdown, to the point of people being brought into their apartments, being brought food, very much in a military style quarantine. We looked at the rest of the world, and knowing how geopolitical environments work and cultures work, we said, this is probably not going to go to this extent in other populations, even if it should, just because of, in essence, almost a freedom scale. What people are used to is civil liberties, what people are used to culturally. So as we saw the disease move into northern Italy, we saw the Italian lockdown. So we had the Wuhan model, then we started building the Italian model. And while the Wuhan model was full lockdown, and we started to see factories shutting down in the supply chain side of China, we started looking at how even travel was stopping through a lot of our satellite sensors and whatnot. In Italy, it was more of stay inside and quarantine, but have a glass of wine and walk the dog in the piazza. So we knew it didn't have that level of understanding of you have to truly lock this down to socially distance. We saw the healthcare systems be overwhelmed in the ICUs in China. We saw the rapid building of medical facilities. So, seeing a 100,000 square foot medical facility be put up in 72 hours is a feat. If anybody's ever had any hands-on construction, it is stunning to see a facility the size of a football field be built over a weekend, or an office building converted into a working hospital in 24 to 48 hours. And watching that Chinese response, we didn't see the same in Italy. We saw the ICUs be overwhelmed in China, the lack of PPE, lack of ventilators, and people coming up with ventilator splitters from duct tape, saran wrap, you name it. In Italy, where we saw the same issues, we noticed there was more patients being put on single ventilators. So in China, we saw maybe 2 patients on a ventilator with basically a home-brewed ventilator splitter, maybe from some garden hose parts or some ventilator circuit parts that were put together by the clinicians in practice. In Italy, we're now seeing 3 and 4 patients put on the same ventilator. Now, it's very early in the disease state. We still know very little about it. We do not know the best route of treatment. We know that if a patient goes on a ventilator, most likely they're not coming off. You do not want to ventilate a patient unless it is life or death. It's not looked at as a great solution in healthcare. And when you think about the ventilator supply chain, it was never really built for this level of scale. Unfortunately, when there's an accident, let's say a bus crashes, or there's a car crash and a bunch of patients come into the ICU and they're paralyzed or they can't breathe on their own, then they're ventilated. When a percentage of your entire population can't breathe and comes into the ICU and needs to be ventilated, that wasn't fully modeled for, nor was there any supply. A hospital may have 3 or 4 ventilators, but they have 1 respiratory technician. So even if you had 100 ventilators, if 1 respiratory technician is trained on them, these are not simple machines to use. You are trained for years on this. It's a real-time telemetry system. You have to monitor the patient's vitals. You have to understand the telemetry of the system. You have to make sure the system isn't malfunctioning. The parts of the ventilator circuit are clean. It's a complex clinical environment. Now, all of a sudden, you have patients swarming this, and they need ventilators. Your clinicians need a massive amount of personal protection equipment, and you have the stress of the healthcare system that can create one of the things that we heard early on was flatten the curve. And this is what this is really about. In the end of the day, if we don't have a population health environment that can meet the needs of a population health crisis, we then have a hardcore crisis on our hands that our healthcare professionals are at risk. And if we lose the healthcare system, we lose everything. We lose our economy, we lose our schools, we lose our transit, we lose our social structure in society. Healthcare is the modern glue of society. While it's not right in many areas and it's way too expensive, conversations that we've had throughout this entire play, the reality is healthcare is our modern glue. If healthcare fails, we don't have a place to go, especially when you're dealing with something that has circulatory and respiratory stressors that require this level of medical intervention. So we saw the curves being flattened, and we started looking at our tools. So what you see on screen right now, it's loading. We use a mapping platform we built called Planet Scan, and we take in all of the data that we can get our hands on, from caseload to climate data to shipping information. And the screen's drawing in right now because it's drawing in the live data. What you're seeing on the left are all the flights and ships globally. I'm on the US view right now. And on the right side is the state of COVID within the United States. And by doing this, we're able to understand how coupled models work. So what we saw was reduced factory output in China back in February. We used satellite imagery to start scanning this. So we started looking at what the emissions, and specifically nitrogen oxide and greenhouse gases and CO2 emissions were over China, and seeing that based on February of a year ago, they were radically lower. So normally China has Chinese New Year in the manufacturing sector. If you've ever manufactured at scale in Asia, you know that during the month of January, you don't manufacture. You get your order in December or you get it in February, but January is Chinese New Year. Early part of February, manufacturing turns back on. So you can see this climatic greenhouse gas change year to year. But what was interesting is it didn't start going back up. The emissions didn't start increasing after that first or second week in February. They stayed low, and they stayed radically low. There's a production manufacturing index released from China that gives the health of the industry, and it hit the lowest rate on recorded history. So the published manufacturing dropped. We had looked at about a week before saying, I think this is going to radically change what the supply chain looks like globally. This is where our chemicals come from. This is where our plastic comes from. This is where our PPE comes from. This is where our toys come from. This is where everything comes from that we built in a modern world. So if we cripple the supply chain starting in Asia, what will be the global effects of this? And so that's where we started looking directly, saying, if China was dealing with its own PPE shortage, how is the world going to deal with it when almost every single part of PPE comes from Asia? Even all of your 3M masks are contracted mostly through Asia. US production of 3M is very small at scale. It's a big name, but in the global production rate of PPE, it's very small. So knowing that, what do? We start looking at what are people going to need right away. You're going to need PPE. You're going to need ventilator supplies, not even fully ventilators per se. We looked at ventilator circuits. We looked at the circuit splitting. And we pulled our network together and had built a bunch of models very quickly. We had looked at all of this saying, okay, what's the national stockpile in the US? We built a calculator around that very quickly. In that calculator, we wanted to look at, if we say there's 12 million N95s in the national supply, and a healthcare worker, say, uses 2 or 3 masks a day, based on what we see in our pandemic models, we run out of all PPE of N95s for US healthcare workers in 2.5 days at pandemic peak. If you look at surgical masks, there was about 30 million or so. We did that model, and that was about a week or so. And I said, okay, so people are going to reuse masks. Instead of changing your mask on every patient, you may have to wear your mask with every patient. And if you understand intubation, when you intubate a patient and when you extubate a patient, the patient expires on you. It's not a pleasant endeavor, but it's just part of healthcare. So what you do is you would either you would intubate a patient, you would change your PPE, and you would go to the next patient. But what happens when there's no more PPE to change into? You have 2 decisions. Do I continue wearing the PPE that could be contaminated? Both, I can contaminate myself, I can contaminate my other healthcare workers, and I can contaminate the next patient. Or do I not treat that patient? And it gave healthcare workers a very difficult decision. So using these calculators and models, we said right off the bat, we need to build something. Let's build the Medical Professional Defense Initiative. Let's bring people together, get all the PPE that we can. We sourced about $500 million in the first weeks of March through China and other Asian sources. We got directly to the mayor's office of New York City. We got to the governor's office of New York State. They weren't prepared of how to buy this. It is not something they do. They don't write a check to China and buy containers of PPE. They buy from a guy in New Jersey who goes to a guy of a supplier who goes to another guy, and that's the supply chain. And so in all of this, we looked at it very simply saying, what can we do? What can we build? So we rapidly built a ventilator splitter. We built a PPE supply chain. We put together our network. We 3D printed for clinical testing and got an FDA EUA for a ventilator splitter product in 82 days end to end. So that's a bit of the intro to it. The reality is that both the maker community, our intelligence, being prepared, and helping this is really where it's at. So I applaud all of you guys, and thanks for having me.
Wow, that was awesome. So your sort of C8 sort of platform, Claim 8 platform is it's kind of a remarkable way to analyze very complex data sets, right? And to use technology to actually help us understand what our choices are, and then take action based on those choices. So that's extraordinary. Thank you, Peter. I have a question here from Cindy Kotala. She asks. She says, the world is full of foresight think tanks, future studies departments and ministries, scenario preparedness reports. So why was the preparedness for this pandemic so spectacularly bad?
Humans, behaviors. There's one thing about the human race is it is brilliantly optimistic, and it has a hard time dealing with downside risk. One thing I think if you look at right now, the stock market is at all-time highs. The economy is nearing all-time lows. That discord is human behavior. The market and economics have never been more decoupled. And I think if we look at that from a global stage of geopolitics, geoeconomics, and understanding pandemic management, it's very similar to climate change. It doesn't compute. There's one part to plan for something. It's also very hard to be on an appropriations committee or be part of a foundation where you're saying, listen, we have to invest $2 billion to prepare for this thing that may happen in 100 years. Or may happen in 10 years or 20 years, when the challenge on your doorstep is, yeah, but we have to feed these people today and tomorrow. We have to educate our kids this afternoon. We have to solve this flooding issue due to this storm this weekend. So that idea, there's almost a latency between our understanding what we have to solve deep down and the professionals who really understand the models, understand what the impacts are with the reality of our modern society. In the end of the day, modern civilization has been built on a model of just in time. Because of our convenience of communication, our convenience of supply chain, our abundancy of things like energy, transportation, food, we don't have to plan ahead. We do not have agrarian cycles as part of our daily life. Farmers still do, but even in manufactured food supply, when you make a bag of Cheetos, you're not thinking about the food production cycle. You're looking at the production line, the economics behind that, and how many you can ship that weekend. So I think it really comes down to human behaviors purely. We have a bias that we never think it will be that bad, so it's very hard for us to prepare. Yet when those of us don't prepare, we lean on those who do prepare, and that stresses the system, just like we've taxed the healthcare workers who are going to work every single day, yet other people are going to parties still. It's an unfair system, but the species nature's not a fair place.
Thank you. I'm sorry we don't have any time for more questions right this moment, but Peter, we can answer some of these questions, sort of in our platform. So let me now turn to Senami Koffi Agbodjinou. Now, he is, you may recognize him for those of you who've been around for a while. He was at Fab 10 in Barcelona. He won the Fab Innovation Award for his 3D printers that were made from computer junk in Togo. And he's an architect and he's an anthropologist. And he's the creator of a collaborative research platform around the issues of architecture in the African city called L'Africain d'Architecture. And he's the founder and catalyst of WoeLab, which is a network of Togolese grassroots labs and tech hubs. And I'm just delighted, Senami, to have you today to talk about your sort of perspective on community in Africa.
Hi, you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Sorry, had to fix. Okay. Yes, I'm very happy to have this opportunity to connect again with the whole big FABlab family. And I thank a lot you, Sherry, Neil, and Thomas for the invitation. I'll try to share my my screen. Can you tell me, please, if you can help me?
Awesome, thank you.
Okay. So I'm sure I will not talk about project and how community is maybe the good spirit to have in front of the crisis we are facing right now, and how the Fab Labs in Africa, by example, give the best inspiration by leading the community response to the crisis. I'm sure you will have a lot of fancy project, lot of printed mask, etc. And I will be more focused. I will try to share with you some global perspective, which are very personal about how community is based on what in Africa and in our philosophy we see it. So I would like to beginning with this small animal. The pangolin was accused to be the one who launched this all this problem we have right now, and but in fact we know that it is the aggressive urbanization and all the stresses and the violence that cause to the rest of the life beings, who create the condition to the emergence of viruses. And we know that in fact it is the capitalist way of living who is at the origin of the crisis we face. But let's stay a little bit with the pangolin. The pangolin is today the most poached animal in the world. It is million and million representative of this animal who is delivered to the biggest trade right now, and it is an animal who is menaced to an extinction very soon, more than even the tiger or the elephant or the rhino. And but the pangolin in the African philosophy is a very interesting animal because it is at the center of a lot of things. The pangolin, it is an animal considered to be at the intersection of a lot of worlds, the world of the water, the world of the earth, and the world of the skies. Is used as a concept, and traditional African people learn a lot with the pangolin. A lot of moral laws was inspired by pangolin. A lot of even technique in architecture, by example. Congo people, by example, learn a lot by observing pangolin. And pangolin give also a lot of lessons to how we can be we can have this sense of common and live in a community. But it is most important, this animal, because it is at the center of the lot of myth and cosmogony in the traditional societies in Africa. And you know that the myth or the cosmogony have the function to articulate the social structure in what we can call the biospheric, and articulate the community in the rest of the nature. And they use the myth to create a sort of co-responsibility between the human installation and the ecosystem see as a global. And lot of our tradition in Africa are based on cosmogony, who try to create this mediation and this symbiosis in the way we reproduce our tool, our architecture, and all the things we need in a way that they didn't attempt or create problem for the rest of the living beings. And the pangolin as a concept help a lot of this. And I think the one of the problem, and it will be the first idea I would like to share with you, a lot of the problems we have right now is because we don't have anymore those myths or those cosmogony who help to articulate the social structure, the community, the way the humans lives with something more bigger and more global, and create this sort of symbiosis with the human installation. And I think that to solve the problem we have right now, we need to recreate new cosmogony, new myths to articulate again the social in the organic or in the biospheric. And the social itself is a lot inspired by the biologic. And I used to say that when we are talking about technology, we see technology like the biggest technology or the most advanced technology is the human augmented. We see human with sensor in his body, etc. And what I used to say is that the very first technology human created was also for increase human, for augment human, but it is not increasing human or augmented human with IT, with sensor or by transforming in a cyborg. It is augment human with another humans. So the social structure and the society is a technology, and the way people invent their interaction and create organic societies is one of the first and the first technology that the human creates. And all the technology we have after this was at the beginning at the service of this first technology. The difficulties we have right now with the digital boom is that we have more and more technology who don't have the social for model, but try to or pretend to replace the social. And the technology itself find itself today like something who can make you avoid to be social. If you have technology, you don't need to have another human or to live in a group. And it is the second big problem we have right now. So the way the technology tried to emancipate itself of his social base is what leads us to more and more problem. But the technology is not the first to try that. We found this problem in the past with the economy itself. The economy, which is based on the social interaction, decided one day to become not a means again or a condition of the society, but become a finality. So and that leads us to the capitalistic way we are living today. So it is the true problem seen from Africa, and by observing the way the world is going right now, we can identify the fact that we don't have any more big mythology or big cosmogony who use as a policy can help us to develop technology in the sense that the technology itself articulates with the social, and the social articulate with the rest of the living beings, the nature is the big problem. And we need to find a solution and create the places we can again have those type of mythology who emerge. And in 2012, when I discovered the FabLab movement, I find a potential in those type of place to recreate the condition of the emergence of new mythologies. Not only mythologies who articulate the social in the nature or the cultural, the social structure in the biospheric, but seeing technology as something who are more distributive itself, can articulate those new mythologies or those new cosmogony, the technology in the social and the social in the organic. And I would like to maybe show quickly, maybe through some project to try to explain what I'm thinking about. The first project is more conceptual, is something who was supposed to be shown to the Biennale, Architecture Biennale this year. And it is a research about how our traditional architecture in Africa take their neighborhood, their environment in account. And as you build a house, you don't change anything in the environment, but you have an installation who help the environment to continue to exist. And by articulate or mix this biological and living aspect with the technology of the structure, seeing with the 3D printing, by example, how this technology of 3D printing can be a new slide who you can add to the biological one and to the cultural one. And by develop this type of this type of approach, you can avoid this tension you have right now in technology to not be again at the service of the social, but become itself a sort of replacement for the need of social social structure. The second project, who some of you know better, maybe, is what we launched on what this big reflection we launched about African cities. And by saying that in the same spirit, we need to, in our cities, try to build new way of seeing things, new philosophy to articulate the interaction between humans in a good way with the rest of the environment, but by using a new technology and using all those distributive tools, those open source tools we have today, who seems to have the same DNA and the same logic than the organic way of making social and the organic way that the nature is going. So maybe you know that the biggest cities tomorrow will be in Africa, and if those cities are built based on what African people see in the West, we will accelerate a lot what we call Anthropocene. And so the future of the human is urban, but the question of the urbanity will be solved in Africa. Africa can change the game or create more and more problem based on this total metropolization we will face in the next year. So in the same spirit, the idea here is to recreate in the city, to avoid this dystopia, the condition to have the emergence of new myth or new cosmogony. So place people can use to develop a new approach of technology who will be ideally mixed with the social and the environment. So we take a lot of time to think about the e-waste problem. We make a lot of projects on e-waste. The most known is the 3D printer made in e-waste, but we have a biggest picture, and the idea is to have a network of place like what in our traditional society we call initiation place, but who take the new technology, create a community, and those community have the contract to change their neighborhood with those technology they developed in the spirit to in this new informatic cosmogony spirit. So we train a lot of kids, and I will focus only on kids in this idea, because we will have the population of Africa will double at 2050, and it is an unexpected urbanization, and you can decide it today what you can do for tomorrow, because the problem you face are so big that you can't even try to anticipate them. So the thing you have to do is to prepare more and more people and kids to be able at their level, when they will face tomorrow those problems, to address them. So we make a lot of projects around each of our labs, and the idea is to have a network of labs all over the city. And one of those projects is to identify all the places we can transform in garden to produce food for the neighborhood of the lab. And based on those physical territory, launch a lot of formation, but like in this initiation spirit, to make people find a way that the technology, the social way of interacting, and the nature itself can have the same dynamic as we have it, based on what we saw in our midst. So it is one aspect of what we are doing. We have today 2 labs, and in the 1 hour kilometer around those 2 labs, we try to develop such project. And maybe to conclude, what I would like to say is, if you say the corona like an organic virus, you'll see that it proceeds in the same spirit as 2 other viruses: the social virus, which is this capitalistic way we are living, and a technological virus, which is the horizon of the smart city. And those 3 levels of virus work together as an ideal, and it is a signal that you can mix ideally the technology, the biological, and the social. And we need to find the best way and the good cosmogony to mix these 3 levels of organism and these 3 levels of complexity, who are all computational complexities. And I will stop there.
Oh my goodness! Thank you so much, Senami. That was very, very inspiring. I'm struck by, we have a comment here from Melvin Wayne, who said, from the perspective of someone who's thinking about students in urban areas in the US lacks a culturally relevant pedagogy in digital fabrication. And this is just a wonderful approach. So I think others feel the same way. I'd kind of like to ask, you and Peter have very different perspectives on community and community building and how you use technology, right? And so I'd like to kind of ask the 2 of you, or to sort of reflect on this for me. I feel like, you know, Fab Labs, Senami, you're talking about sort of Fab Labs as community spaces with or without technology. I mean, we use technology, but they really are about creating community. And I feel like, Peter, you're talking about Fab Labs as, you know, innovation spaces where community comes and creates technologies. So they're very different perspectives, and they both can be very powerful and useful. And both of you have built Fab Labs and makerspaces and networks. I think, Peter, you built one actually at the foot of Wall Street, if I remember correctly, right? So, you know, how can we use these spaces to prepare for a future that we really can't predict or imagine yet, right? You know, how are we going to use these to help both at the systemic scale, but at the local scale? Can you reflect a little bit on that for me? Both of you.
Senami, nice to see you, man. Great work. I've been following some of your work for a while, and I think, Sherry, you know, from my perspective is we both have really important places and there's lots of overlap. So I think even in different perspectives, the diversity of perspectives, the diversity of society, the diversity of the environments we're solving in actually comes together to create a larger good. But I really applaud everything from the smallest effort to the biggest effort, because we have so much to solve together and so much to learn from each other. You know, mine personally is wherever you can get in and find a community who feels that you can move forward together and you can get others to rally behind it, that's the community for you.
Yes, I go in the same way. I think the problem we will face tomorrow are so unpredictable. You can, and the only one thing to do is maybe to try to give more and more powerful the only one technology who help in any case, because you can develop a very good and a very high technology today, but it will not maybe the good one for the crisis we face tomorrow. But you have one technology who work for any crisis. It is the community. It is the power of the group, and this capacity another human can be helpful to other ones. So everything we are doing today, even by developing technology, has to be at the service of this first and powerful technology, who is the social structure.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think we look at technology too many times as the solution, and technology is just a tool. And a lot of times technology and the quote unquote innovation world really misses the mark. You know, we'll bring kids together into these large scale workshops and they start solving things in just different ways, where the adults will sit around the room and they'll come up with this spectacular technology solution. And we explain, like, yeah, there's no electricity. That just won't work. And you realize the adults never asked the questions. The kids wanted to understand, what were the resources that are there? Do they have electricity? Do they have water? Do they have, could we do solar? And then even at that point, does it need electricity in the first place? Is this something that we can do with local, if you will, ingredients, things that are around a town or a village? And I just think that that side is so interesting, where technology becomes the solve. Technology isn't the solve. It's just one of many tools.
Mike, I have a question for you, Sename, or actually sort of for both of you. Is your approach and action for an emerging cosmogony being shared with other African countries? And how do both initiatives, can they connect with each other? In some ways they feel like they conflict or they're contradictory, but they manifest the same values. So, you know, how can they connect, or can they connect?
Yes, me, I'm working about a cosmogony, but because it is something shared by all the humanity. I think even Western people have a cosmogony, and they just forget it at the beginning. And the cosmogony is very helpful because it is another way to make politics with some concept you can engram in the conscience of people. And in Africa, we have a sort of same basis in our philosophy all over the continent. Some call it Ubuntu, some call it maths, But in those, in this specific way of things, you have at his center the idea that everything is working as with the same energy. And as you can develop the way of the knowledge who can use this sort of big ontology, and you will avoid a lot of problem we have right now, which is based on what the direction the West philosophy takes, which is the humanity. The humanity is the way to see the human as something specific and something who have to, in French we say cliver, who don't have to interact with the rest of the of what we can call cosmos, etc. But by seeing human as a part of a totality and responsible of the totality, you will, in fact, have another way of seeing things, even in the way you see technology. And what I used to say is that technology itself, if you take it without all the work the laboratory are doing, the Silicon Valley, to transform it in something who have to make money, technology itself is going to this organic spirit. So it is the Silicon Valley who hijacks the technology and use it as something a device who need to make money. But if you have a new way of seeing design, and design by using the technology as a resource, not to make money first, but to use it as what it is, like something who is a part of the totality, we will have new type of device, and we will not face the problem we have right now with by using those new generation of device.
I think looking at that technology lens as well, Senami, I think the Silicon Valley side has become so toxic to the worldview. The idea of the Silicon Valley solution, the technology. When you look at so much of Silicon technology, the stuff that sells and makes everyone money, it's really usually fairly low tech. I mean, when you look at the technology behind Twitter, it's very low technology. It has to be scaled, so it's massive computational and server. But in the end of the day, 128 characters, 160 characters distributed to a website and an app. And I think often this gets so overlooked that so much of the hard technology is knowing your audience, knowing your customer on that side, and then really understanding not what to do, but what not to do. And I think you're exactly right. I think the humanity side of this, and how do you help really truly understand the voice of the customer, really from empathy and compassion, and understanding that humans can create a lot of problems. We can also create a lot of solutions. So we create problems and we create solutions. And in that conflict, I think becomes kind of the magic of how we figure out even what civilization is. And technology becoming such a driver when really it should be a passenger.
That's so interesting. I wanted just to poke for one moment at this idea about, sort of innovation. We saw a lot of innovation come out of the FabLab network at the grassroots level, right, at the very local level, and how that relates to efficiency and sustainability, right? And this starts to draw in, I think, some ideas that some things that Senami was starting to say about around communal versus sort of capitalist and sort of collective approaches. Can you kind of just reflect a little bit about reflect for me, especially Peter, on how this tension works between sort of individual innovation and these spaces that weren't necessarily meant to be manufacturing spaces, and then sort of the larger scale, how we make this sustainable, our responses and our supporting communities.
I think looking at, I've been fascinated with what libraries have done. libraries being a place, you know, and frankly to a lot of a population, the library is an ancient institution, but libraries have built maker spaces, libraries have brought innovation into communities, and they've done it in a way that's really accessible so that you can, with your library card for free, go into a library maker space. You can not only have access to the additive printing tools, you have access to AutoCAD and all the tools there. There's libraries where you can, with your library card, go and check out a HoloLens. And when you really think, I think the power of that, a free library card, you can go check out a $5,000 piece of technology that you just wouldn't have access to anyway. And I'm really interested in where innovation spaces, maker spaces, community spaces are really being able to push that innovation front, not from necessarily the innovation of what they house, the printers and the technology, but the innovation of access, the innovation of funding for that access. We work with a group called Every Library, and Every Library is responsible for helping raise about $250 billion to get to libraries all across the US. Like, and you think about that side of, you know, what a library is. Someone may have opened their home to their collection of books 200 years ago, and that was a library. Now we have community libraries, there's research libraries. And I think this really interesting hybridization of libraries, maker spaces, community farms. You know, you see libraries that have bee keeps. You have, so you can learn not only horticulture, but you understand how the life cycle and pollination works through a super pollinator. And having access to real honey in a urban environment. That library just has, I found it to be a massively underused, undervalued, but really, really accessible. And I've seen this globally. You know, this is not just the US side, but globally libraries are just a magnificent place.
Thank you. Yes, and they do. They bring a literacy, you know, that prepares us for that unknown future, right? Which I think is extraordinary. Well, thank you both so much, Senami and Peter, for your time and for participating today and for the amazing thoughts and work that you're doing. I'm going to turn my head. Please stay with us if you would like to and maybe participate after we've talked to our panelists here, but I'd like to turn to our panelists. You are all part of the network in a way, right? You're going to tell us about how you've responded during the initial days of the pandemic, and how, and what I'm amazed at is how each of you have very differently interpreted and figured out how to organize your communities and serve your communities, both you know, in terms of bringing together makers regionally, nationally, or very, very locally, and how you brought support into the community. And these are just a few of the extraordinary examples from all over the network, but these are some highlights for sure. And I think you're going to show, I think what we'd like to know is, you know, and see is how you've helping us build resilience and independence in our communities. So with that, I'd like to first introduce Christie Metz and Tony. Christie went to, she grew up in Aruba, and she went to university in Utrecht and then had an amazing sort of life around the world. But she helped to establish the Metabolic Foundation, which is really focusing on empowering communities to transition towards more sustainable and equitable development. And in 2016, she and Tony moved back to Aruba from other places and established the first makerspace there, as well as a plastics recycling facility. So Christie, Tony, please tell us what you were up to these past few months.
Hi, Sherry. Thank you so much for inviting us to be part of this panel. It's really awesome. Yeah, so we're based in Aruba. So for those who don't know, Aruba is a small island in the Caribbean off the coast of Venezuela, but it's a Dutch island. We, like Sherry said, we started a makerspace here, and actually partially inspired by WoeLab. Like our first makerspace, we built our own tools out of e-waste. So that's kind of really cool to be here in the same session. And the whole idea of our space and our foundation, which is connected to Metabolic in the Netherlands, is to like use access to technology and opening up the development of technology to help our community transition towards more circular economy in an equitable way, where we're actually like facing the issues we have locally. And for the long time, like we've expected these things to be more related to climate change, which they for sure will be, and hurricanes as they happen here. But now we found ourselves in a different challenge, which we were not expecting, which was COVID-19, like everyone else. So just we have actually 2 library maker spaces. That's kind of funny that Peter just mentioned that. So we actually started our maker spaces collaborating with an art school, but now with the library. So we have 2 maker spaces, and then we transformed an old library bus into a maker bus. So we visit schools and have workshops with kids. And out of the space, the first kind of solution that developed locally was the recycling center. It's called Plastic Beach Party. But so in March, we were busy with all of these spaces doing all the things we usually do. And so COVID-19 had already started spreading, but we didn't think, it wasn't really happening here yet. And it was already in Europe, right? But it wasn't really happening here. So I can say, like, on March 13, we still had a teacher's workshop at our makerspace. And then from one day to the next, we had our first case on March 14th, and the island shut down. So this was huge for us because Aruba is actually like super dependent on tourism, like more than 90% dependent on tourism. So basically our whole economy shut down. We only have 100,000 people on the island, so it's a very small island. And about 70% of people lost their jobs. So it is very intense. And as I said, this was in March. So it was at the same time where like COVID was really big in Europe and was just like hitting the United States in New York. So I like foresaw that we would not have enough PPE because like if even like big countries didn't have PPE, then we're definitely not going to have enough PPE. So I immediately started calling all of everyone I knew, trying to find out who is in charge of procurement at the hospitals. And in this process, at the same time, trying to learn as much as possible from the open source community. Especially, I saw a lot of the work being done by Prusa, making the shields. We were following the Facebook group, Open COVID, and just trying to be ready so that we could help. Ideally with 3D printing. So that's kind of like where we started. And then we got calls and they were like, actually, we need safety glasses. We couldn't find any open source designs, but this is, this is the design. And we ended up like being able to make it with a laser cutter and a 3D printer. So the safety glasses was the first thing that we ended up making for the hospitals. After that, we were like thinking about shields, but they weren't using shields yet. They were like, actually, can you guys make surgical caps, surgical gowns, surgical masks? And actually, I don't know how to sew. So, but you know, taking the maker kind of mantra, saying like, you know, we'll figure it out. We're able to make anything. I looked around in my community, and our community actually every year throws this giant party, like most Caribbean islands, right? So we throw carnival, and like in a month we make thousands of costumes. So I was like, if there is one thing I know my community can do is sew. So we made like an open call. We contacted all the carnival groups. We put it out on social media, and we were asking people who know how to sew if they could help us make these things for the hospital. And of course, we got a lot of response. So actually, with our community and truly distributed manufacturing style, people got out their sewing machines. Some people got out their grandmother's sewing machine that's like 100 years old, and just like started making things. And we were able to make thousands of surgical caps and surgical gowns. So the next issue we had, which I'm sure a lot of communities also experience, is that we didn't have access to the right material, right? And nothing was coming into the island. So we had shortage of everything from like elastics to fabric. We found out that spun-bound polypropylene, which is the material that's usually used, is also like used in these bags that they give away at stores. So we contacted local stores and they gave us thousands of bags that all got turned into these surgical caps. And for the gowns, it was a bigger issue because we didn't have big enough bags to make these things, right? So the first thing we did was made them out of PVC, shower curtains. So we sewed shower curtains. And then afterwards, we found out that actually mattress stores, that the fabric they use for building mattresses is the right fabric. So then we were able to make more of that. When we ran out of that material, we ended up just sewing drop cloth, which is they use in construction a bunch and turning like painting suits into these surgical gowns. So we had to be really creative with that. Tony's going to share a little bit about what we did with 3D printing, which I'm sure more of you guys will recognize.
Yeah, I'll be quick. So basically we thought we have to make a lot of things with a 3D printer, which we have more experience with, so it's more comfortable. But they take like an hour to two for each piece and they're going to be thrown away, so we got to make a lot. So we reached out to everybody we knew with 3D printers, and then they connected us to this other group. So we basically hijacked this 3D printing WhatsApp group and used it to organize the different printers. And we found more than just like an expanded capacity. We found that working together to solve problems, to share models and design ideas was what really helped us to meet the demand from the hospitals.
So the last thing that I would like to share is that now what we found is we saw a design from the University of Florida in making masks that they actually have all of this fabric, like surgical fabric at hospitals, which I'm sure a lot of communities have access to. The hospital itself has been giving us this fabric. And so far, like my mom's been sewing a bunch of them. We've had more people in the community sewing, but we're also experimenting with using 3D printing to actually heat bind, because the material is usually heat bound, and to like use the 3D printers to actually connect to make these masks. So combining these two fabrics and 3D printing experiments we've been doing. And we're now making reusable masks for all the schools for the reopening. So yeah, that's what we've been doing.
Wow. Wow, that is an extraordinary story. First of all, just, thinking of using the whole Carnival network, the Carnival network is crazy. But then, being able to go out and leverage different communities and leverage different resources, like going to the hospitals or going to the stores to get their bags. I mean, that's just an amazing story. It's so innovative. Very inspiring. Thank you. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Christie. Well, so we have another story coming up. Now, this is a crazy dynamic duo that showed up. I was at a maker fair, the first maker fair in Kerala, India, in the state of Kerala, India. And these two people showed up that were just amazing. And they were like, we have to talk to you. We have to talk to you. It turns out this was Vaibhav and Richa, and we were in, and they were from Mumbai, and they had this amazing makerspace there. And Vaibhav, he's a mechanical engineer by education. I think you were educated at, was it at Boston University? I think, is that right, Vaibhav? Yeah. And about 7 years ago, he put together, kind of combined his mechanical engineering and his passion for carpentry together to, create this makerspace. So it's called Maker's Asylum. And then he paired up both in business and in life with Richa. And Richa is, she's a businesswoman and has done a lot of work with, even at the government level with IT and IT investments. So the two of them work together on the Maker's Asylum in Mumbai and have an extraordinary story to tell there as well. So Vaibhav, Richa.
Thank you, Sherry. We've got 10 minutes, so we're going to do this quickly. Thank you so much. We're going to share our screen to just give you an insight. You can go into the presentation mode, Vaibhav. Yeah. All right. Just for everyone who's in different parts of the world, we just wanted to show you a little bit about how our space is in Bombay. That's me and Vaibhav. Sherry just introduced us. That's how Makers Asylum Mumbai looks like. You can also see Sameera sitting over here at this space and a few others. So this is at the time when we do our programs at this space. This is our shop, the metal shop on the terrace. This is a wood shop, laser cutting lab, all familiar things, 3D printing lab, uh, electronics lab, and a super nice community terrace where we love to do our barbecue, which we've also made at obviously at the space. So we love hosting everyone over there. And yeah, I mean, primarily Makers Asylum works on two things: access to learning and access to tools. That's our primary focus around what we do at the space. And our vision is to foster an innovative ecosystem in India in the areas of hardware design and sustainability. So that's pretty much what we've been focusing on for the last couple of years now. And we primarily work on three pillars of the methodology of design thinking, frugal innovation, and making and rapid prototyping. At the center of it lies the UN Sustainable Development Goals, where we focus our energies on creating solutions for local communities across both through our programs. So just a glimpse of a couple of programs that we've been doing. This is something called the STEAM Fabricarium that we do with the differently abled community, where we bring across differently abled community with temporarily able community like ourselves, like, you know, engineer designers, and we work together on solving problems for them, by them. And we've been doing this, and it's a very close program to our heart. And we also do something called the STEAM School, where we bring together, again, interdisciplinary groups to work on local community issues. We host this along with CRE, which is a university in Paris. And then we have a program which is Dive. And then we also do this in Paris, which is called the SDG School, where we focus again on, you know, SDG based solutions for local communities. But all of that got canceled this year because COVID happened and we had to shut the space down. And then I'm going to let Vaibhav tell you what really went down since the lockdown on the 23rd of March.
Thank you. So just like Richa said, that on the 23rd of March, India went into the largest lockdown that we've ever seen. So immediately we had to shut down our space. However, what we did a little differently, I guess, was that we locked ourselves down inside our space with a few other volunteers. And we closed the shutter down so that nobody sees us and nobody complains. And we went inside and we started living over here. We literally got our backpacks the next day, sneaked out, got everything that we needed, got some supplies for a few days, and decided to stay over. We thought we might as well make ourselves useful, do some online content, do something, at least with the lab. If we have the tools, we can do something. Sitting at home, Makers Asylum will die. And we didn't want Makers Asylum to die because that's like our little baby. And we are a self-sustainable makerspace. And we have been so for the past 7 years. What I mean by self-sustainable spaces, we're not funded by any organization, and we have a space that we pay rent for. So we actually have an infrastructure of our own that we also runs us and everything else. So the first thing that we came up with was the face shield. And right on the 25th of March, we started releasing some designs. We created GitHub repository, started sharing our designs and talking about it to other parts of the world. What happened is that some doctors also started reaching out to us because they wanted this really badly. And we had no idea how big the shortage was in India at this time. Because the next day, all the news articles, everything was talking about how big the problem was in terms of the lack of PPEs and the lack of face shields in the country, because India never really made face shields before this, if you think about it. This was a novel product at that time. So we started making stuff and we reached out to a few volunteers through our social media channel. Initially, we thought we'll make 10,000 of them. That was like our target, as high as we could think on that time, that we'll be able to make 10,000.
Which was also quite scary because it was just like 3-4 of us.
Honestly, I said 1,000, Richa said 10,000, and I had a fight with her that why did you increase it to 10,000 without asking me? That's what happened at that point, because it was scary to make so many with very, very minimal resources because everything was shut. All the shops were shut. Everything was shut. So, and most importantly, the supply chain was choked. So when we made our first batch of 500 units, we sent them to Bangalore, and there was no way that it reached on time. Ambulances were coming in to pick up the PPEs and the face shields from Makers Asylum. So it was pretty bad in the way that logistics was happening. FedEx was not working. None of the courier companies was working. So that's when we open sourced the design. We reached out to all the labs. We started making phone calls, started reaching to our friends in different parts of the country to start making these locally and started connecting the dots. So for example, somebody who had a space, we connected them to somebody who had a laser cutter. We connected them to somebody who had access to the hospitals and things like that, so that people could start making locally and servicing their local hospitals. And one more thing that we really focused on was the localization of this. So this was the design that we used, which I would like to talk about for a quick second. One of the exciting things was that we didn't go for 3D printing because the fact that there are not so many 3D printers in India. But one thing that was there in plenty was laser cutters, because India has a full industry of laser cutters. So what we did was we created designs using laser cutting and using materials like foam board, which are commonly used in marketing and are super cheap. So we were able to put the price down of these to under 75 cents, including cost to be able to sustain and buy food and everything that we needed at this time. So under 75 cents, we were making these out of foam board. And then something magical happened. Labs across the country started joining us. In the first, it took us 15 days. In the first 15 days, we made our first 100,000 face shields. The next 100,000 came within 7 days. And at one point, we were making 100,000 face shields a day towards the end of it. And we reached 1 million face shields in 49 days, just to give you a perspective of how things started growing. And you know what? One of the best things that I loved about this, Makers Asylum was consistent. You can see the yellow line. That's Makers Asylum. It's been consistent through the curve. However, other labs like the one in Kolkata and Pune had like leaping bounds and they started jumping. There was a very interesting trend in the way that different labs were producing these. One of our friends was sitting at home and doing all the analysis and understanding how each lab is progressing and how Makers Asylum was completely consistent every day, keeping on going every day, which was beautiful. So we didn't make the most amount of face shields in the M19 collective, but we were very consistent throughout the process, which is something that we liked. And to just give you a perspective, we had Jammu and Kashmir, which is the north of India, Guwahati, which is the east of India, Mumbai, which is the west of India, Karnataka, which is the south of India. We had the east, north, west, south covered. So literally at one point, no matter what part of India you called us from, no matter what hospital there was, we were able to get you face shields in no time because we knew people who were making them locally and providing them. One more thing that I would like to touch upon real quick is the diversity of the people. We had neuropsychologists in the room. We had Goldman Sachs analysts in the room. We had people from surgeons in the room. We had makers. We had artists. We had filmmakers, all sorts of people from very, very different backgrounds who joined us to make these, not only in Mumbai, but all across the country. We had a crowdfunding campaign running that helped us raise the funds. There was a lot of media attention that really helped push that forward. One more problem that was really there, in the lack of time, I'll just finish it, was the migrant workers in India, because there was a huge problem of migrant workers because India has a huge corpus of daily wages, and they had to go back home. They couldn't sustain being in the urban parts of the country. So we supplied face shields to them as well so that they can stay safe, cook for each other. And there was a huge, hundreds of thousands of these migrant workers had to go back home. So we were supplying to them as well. We also made baby shields. We made shields for the Karamcharis, for the police. The entire police force was at one point wearing face shields by Makers Asylum, which was pretty cool. And now we're also making PAPRs. So we have them right here, but in the lack of time, I'll just let this one be. And they've started going out to all the big hospitals in India. I won't play the video because we're out of time. I'll pass it back to Sherry, but there is a nice video if we have the time later on, I would love to play it for you guys.
Okay. Well, first of all, how inspiring is that? A million face shields in 49 days across the country. I think you said it was like, how many sort of labs and spaces participated? Like 45 or something?
42. 42.
Today's day 49 of the M19 collection.
And I just heard in the background, that was sort of an inspirational chant, yes, right? That you would use to kind of motivate everybody in the lab, which I think was a wonderful, wonderful addition. And the other thing I think was so interesting is that you learned so much about manufacturing in that time frame, right? You know, something like 28 different iterations of the shield before you finally settled on what was sustainable locally. Is that right? Yeah.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
We tried all sorts of materials, from wood to foam board to acrylic to polycarbonate. But we had to figure out what was sustainable, at the same time serve the right purpose.
And also available at low cost, because pricing in India plays a very important role in basic, essential things that people buy. So it's very important that you keep that at, something which is affordable for everyone.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys. Super inspiring. Now I'd love to introduce Thomas Landrain. Thomas is this co-founder and CEO of Just One Giant Lab, which you may have heard of, joggle.io. And he's a synthetic biology researcher who has also, out of necessity, become a social entrepreneur and an activist. He's working to build alternative models, both to research, to academic research, but also to corporate innovation systems, and trying to use open source ideas and technologies to scale some of these ideas and scale community-based science and open source innovation. So, Thomas, please tell us about Joggle and tell us about your work.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Sherry, for the introduction. Very honored to be there and be part of this program. With 10 minutes, I'm going to try to expose what has been going on for the last 4 months, which has been probably one of the most intense moments of my life. So it's going to be a challenge. So congratulations to all of the previous speakers, because it was really a fit to do that. So I would like to start by sharing a bit of my screen very fast. There. Let's go up. So the one thing that I like to say is we really have the chance of living a new age for communities. I've been, as Sherry said, I'm a scientist by training. I'm doing academic research, but within the academic system, I was always very much constrained that I was not able to work with non-researchers, being able to work on thematics, on problems that were not part of the thematic of my laboratory. So very fast, I joined the DIY bio movement, the do-it-yourself biology movement, and actually started more than 10 years ago, the first biohacker space in France called La Paillasse. And that really actually has completely changed my perspective of how can we build science? What is the fabric of science? And, open laboratories have been a huge revolution in the last few years. And when you look at the FABlab networks, for example, it's amazing. And so, being able to access a physical lab is one thing, but then you look at those communities and what they're able to do, and it looks great, but somehow, you would like it to be even more amazing. Like you would like it to be able to achieve, like so much more promises regarding like the complexity of projects, how it can contribute even to more, even scientific projects, I would then at a larger scale. The thing is, you need critical mass. You need a lot of more resources, people coming together, and somehow we were not seeing this happening. And we really worked toward this, trying to build network of laboratories. But it was not happening there. And I was myself part of those laboratories. This is La Paillasse back in the days in a squat. And at the end, when you think about it, it's more than open laboratories. It's really about how do you bring the technology, the opportunity to explore to a bigger number. It's not only about the makers, but it's about anyone. It's about the biohackers, about the scientists, about the professionals, the students. And so how do you create a framework that is really welcoming so that everyone can really be part of it? And so in that sense, Peter was talking about it. It's like, we have so many problems to solve to that, and it's like we need an infinite amount of contributors to join. And when you look at the number of active contributors to science, it's very small. It's about a person in the thousands in the world. So, and when you look at the number of people who got access to higher education, it's about 1 billion people. So the gap is huge. So can we recover a bit part, like a small part of that already? That would be amazing. So we need to create a new kind of institutions to do that, because traditional laboratories and cannot, they're not equipped to do that. At the end, it's really about solving an accessibility issue, connecting people who are actively leading projects, such as researchers, entrepreneurs, civil servants, and activists, but with people who would like to contribute, but find it hard actually to find such an opportunity, a way to do it, such as students, professionals, patients, normal citizens. So that's the reason why we built Just One Giant Lab. It's a digital platform. It's an NGO first, and that works as a research laboratory, but where anyone can be a member of it. And so it's not a physical space. It's a digital platform where we bring people together in order to create those open teams, through an open collaboration. And so we, at the same time, it's really like a place where you can navigate, and we create the infinite sea of projects and talents where you can find people who can contribute. You can become collaborators. You can find projects you can contribute to, but also we create programs to focus this whole energy, community energy, towards specific points, and to really be able to have this critical mass of creativity. And so this is just a small video of, because we just celebrated our 1-year anniversary for Drogo. And one big event obviously happened in the last few months is COVID-19. And so we created a program specifically for COVID-19. We call it the Open COVID-19 Initiative. And it started with this very simple point. I'm part of the DIY Bio movement. So at first I looked at what is missing. We're in the end of February. What's missing is not masks. We're missing diagnosis tests. We don't know how many people are being contaminated. We don't know how the disease is spreading. So, and so where are they? Like, can we build some of them? Can we actually DIY some of them? So I started to contact some of my community and say, can we work on this, please? And so we came together, and very fast, actually, we launched it in the 1st of March. The community actually just boomed. And this is what, you see the number of users. We were still underground trying to figure out how to make things happen. And then, we're up to more than 4,600 users today. And when you look at what's most interesting parts, really the projects and the communities, is we have this incredible diversity of people who are not only working, using biotechnology to do diagnosis tests, but a lot of people working on how to use, open source data to better understand how the disease is spreading, or to better understand the disease by itself, or the virus. We have people working also on new kind of tools to improve daily lives, people working on engineering to do, like, for example, masks. We have plenty of people that design masks and could find contributors, even actually got approved by, for example, the Canadian authorities. And so it's been really fun. We have a lot of projects, active projects right now around COVID-19, and I encourage you actually to check it out. And we've gathered them around 5 main challenges: data, validation, prevention, diagnostics, and treatments. It's been really overwhelming. Our servers crashed like so many times, like I don't remember, I cannot count. We receive visitors from almost every country in the world. And it's been really amazing to see how we could finally manage to empower people who would like to contribute, have an idea, bring them together, providing them resources, opportunities to collaborate and make the project happen. And in fact, if let me show you an example. Let me share just fast another screen. It's this one. So this is, I'm back on the platform here, and this is one of the diagnostic projects. And this project was started early on in March. And so here you can check the number of contributors. And in those contributors, you have very, very different people. You have biohackers, you have entrepreneurs, working in biotech startups, and you have also people from the CDC, the public authority in the US, for example. And so they've been working together in a way that, they're not an official entity. They're not an official academic laboratory, but they were coming together, trying to build the first open source diagnosis test for COVID-19. And now they're very far. In fact, we are testing those kits in APHP, which is the largest cluster of hospitals in Europe, in the virology lab. And so if that works, that would be quite a feat. And so in order to help those projects that couldn't actually apply normally to existing grants, because they're not an official entity, they're just a group of people. We created a system. So the sharing is a bit annoying, but let me go back to my presentation. There. And so thanks to our partners, we created a way to support those projects using microgrants. And that's been really transformative. Projects could apply transparently, so they would write everything down on the platform, and the community will review the projects. Everything was transparent, and we were ranking project by impact and feasibility. And if a project makes it above the threshold, automatically it is being funded, and the funding is about 3,000 euros. But that's enough actually to fund the consumables and the materials to make a proof of concept. And if a project is successful with good results, it can apply again, and that actually happens twice. And so, we have this, huge network of individuals working together, helping each other, not only on projects, but also on the onboarding, on making sure that a new member is understand how to get to a place where he or she can help. It's been really, really transformative for us, and it really shows that that you can actually, by providing the right support and the right framework to an open community, you can really achieve something that is at the level of the best laboratory in the world. And it's just a matter of connecting, the people, the talents, the resources that are out there, and there are plenty, with the right problems to solve. And I think COVID-19 has been a fantastic opportunity to prove this. I will end this here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Thomas. It's so interesting because the platform is kind of like an end-to-end solution in a way, right? Except for it's open source, but kind of like Peter, you're like tapping the mind share of a global network of in some cases expertise, in some cases makers, but allowing everyone to participate. So. But I like this idea of support and promote and connect. I think those are interesting and critical to the process. So thank you for that. I'm gonna, because I don't want us to run out of time, we have to hear from Sameera. Sameera Chukkapalli, she is she's an architect, an advanced architect, and she is the director of Needlab. And I don't know if you've ever heard of Needlab in Barcelona, but it's an amazing organization. They co-create, co-design human and environmental solutions with communities around the world. It's a not-for-profit, and they problem solve around habitat and urban resilience in cities and in rural communities. And so they have about 46 projects on 4 continents, and they're directly impacting about 5,000 people. And she's a UNIS and a Youth Fellow, a Fab City Fellow, SIMP leader, and a lot more. So Sameera, please tell us about your work in Needlab.
Thank you, Sherry, and Thomas, Neil, and the Fab community for having me here. To add to what Sherry said, I was a Fab Academy. I was part of the whole Fab movement and graduated with architectural masters at, I think, one of the hotspots, Fab Labs in Barcelona, which kind of created this make and innovate attitude. And during my master's, I started Needlab. And as an architect, Thomas has a very, very good joke. Architects who don't do architecture impact more people. And I'm starting to relate to that a lot more. I think architects should go and think of communities a lot more than we do. So I'm going to show you some examples of what we do at Needlab. So this is Needlab. We question what is needed in some communities. We answer to that needs in our lab by researching, analyzing, and talking to that community, and then having a conversation with nature and technology. In any case, if you find us communicating with the trees or people in some part of the world, don't be surprised. That's what literally we do every day. And how we do it, we do consultancy, we do conduct workshops, we do advocate in all these impact fields. And this is a map. We are slowly growing, addressing pain points of each community by creating very community-centered solutions. This was me with some of the very, very passionate innovators and our community members in Kenya. This was us actually making a super cool VR game in South Korea about pollution and educating kids about using metro instead of their own cars. And this was in Barcelona. We designed a very, very traditional arch for community to interact. And we questioned museums whether art should be interacted with or should be viewed. And we said everybody should touch everything. So we opened up the museum to have a picnic. And this was in India. This was in the Himalayas. Again, community-centered solutions. This was in Kuwait. We trained skills about building and architecture, and this was a workshop. And this was in Vietnam. And this was in Kenya again at the UN. So we usually do these workshops and skill building and skill development things which empower communities to be resilient. And during COVID, we couldn't build, most of the sites were closed. So it was pretty much that everyone experienced. And the question about community came very, very strong to us. And then John Noel, whom I very passionately met at Makers Asylum in Mumbai, connecting back to our bigger community, said we should reuse masks. And he read to me, and I was like, well, everything is shut down. How do we do this? And we built a community around that. Within days, we had doctors, psychologists, practitioners, material science researchers, everybody on board digitally. And we questioned sustainability in the environment of urgent need and use and throw requirement of this virus. Because this virus aim was solely to attack every individual and spread. So we were like, in that case, how can we do something that's sustainable and support the system? And we read through intense amount of research papers as a group, and then we came up with a solution that what if non-frontline workers are able to disinfect the face masks they have access to? Because all of these have to be sterilized or disinfected in some way or the other to be reused, because you have to change them every 3 hours. So we were like, if we can reduce the curve, that'll be great. And we designed these devices to support community. And the aim is that they will come in supermarkets and in old age homes where we can support people to disinfect their own masks, to increase the number of masks in the community, and also to do it in a sustainable way. And we joined other communities. We joined the UN Habitat, we joined Airbus in supporting them doing same sustainable solutions. And then we also built another community around mental health, where we had a lot of psychologists and activities to support the lockdown situation. You can check these out on the website. And when we questioned community, we thought everybody was moving so fast towards some solutions that we forgot a lot of our community members. And we questioned what happens to homeless people. And for that, we built another community again to solve that issue. And we designed an online platform where, let's say, at risk to be someone to be homeless or already homeless people can learn skills and empower themselves to to able to come out of this during COVID. And what we learned from this before and after COVID was that Needlab was very, very centered around building communities, empowering them, learning from them, getting feedback, and solving all the problems. And that didn't change even though physically we were not to be very close to the community. So what we took from that is there's a very, very strong sense of problem-solving attitude when community and people come together. And that's what we do at Needlab. And we kind of learned all over again that it's possible even not to be on site and to do that. And this led us to more opening up more doors. So we'll be having 3 more initiatives that'll be coming out of Needlab. We'll be developing skills for homeless people, teaching women to build more structures. And all of these are a result of COVID. Even though it has caused a lot of turmoil in the world, I take away from it, from myself and the Needlab community, that we are able to reduce the noise around us and finally focus on what actually creates solutions. And that's our takeaway. And we look forward to meeting you guys in any way that we can support you, and our website where you can write to us if there's a problem that you want us to solve. And that's all from me. Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you again for a very inspiring story. I really, I like the idea of, you know, trying to reach out to marginalized communities, right? The ones that are not going to probably, you know, benefit as often from what we do. And the idea of collective intelligence, right? Collective intelligence and then collective and inclusive action, right? Which are both extraordinarily important in your work. And so, you know, you guys are an amazing group of people. I'm so inspired by what you're doing. And I guess I'd like to ask if, you know, what you do, is it scalable, right? I mean, each of you have approached this differently. If this goes on for, just as an example, if this went on for 3, 4, 5 more years, you know, is what you're doing sustainable and or scalable? You know, how do you think of it? Can you reflect on that as a group, on the sort of scalability and sustainability, both financially and for the planet? I think all of you are thinking about what happens to the planet, but certainly also just financially, because, you know, you've really stepped up to the plate, but not necessarily always in a financially sustainable way. So could you reflect on that a little bit?
Sure. I'll take the bullet first. It's a difficult one. I think Vaibhav shed a bit of light on that. A lot of labs are sustainable financially, at least through government support or aid. So now, more question to everybody who's distributedly manufacturing is, how can everyone turn sustainable financially? And we've seen this a bit like a repeatable model that is able to give a product or a service with less work from the team is something that can create financial sustainability. For example, Maker's Asylum, if you take, they designed and prototyped a product which kind of repeatedly gave them revenue and is doing so continuously, and the impact numbers are going up. I believe strongly that in 1 or 2 years, all these community labs will be able to sustainably solve a lot of issues and be financially independent in doing so. And yeah, and Needlab, directly answering from our perspective, we are going in that direction. We do have a projection map of having a full-time staff of 5 people financially sustainable in the next 2-3 years. So yeah, I believe we can do this.
I'd like to add a perspective that there is 2 different things. One is being able to produce at cost sustainably, as Maker Asylum has been doing. Another thing is to do the R&D. R&D can be very costly. And so once you have the defined design, that's right. And so usually what is a good problem to work on from the R&D perspective depends on how long it's going to take, how complicated it's going to be, how big the machine or expensive the machines are going to be, or materials. And so at the end, that's the typical point that we wanted to solve with Juggle. Is there are some problems that are just very hard to solve classically, where you know, because there is no just business model, because the people that are touched by the problem and that they cannot buy the solution. And so being able to just bring together and say, okay, we're going to work voluntarily together. I mean, this is to build commons, technological and scientific commons. And we know that we're doing this for free, but it's going to help build foundations for innovations to sprout out of that. And if we're big enough, it means that our ability to address many problems will increase. And so once you have an open source model, because everything that we do at Juggle is fully open source, it means that anyone can just take it and apply it, and let's say Maker Science take it a model and can just either take it as it is or even improve it locally, or they can actually share what they've been doing and find an excellent community to maybe fork it or improve it. So I think we're really at the crossroad where there is the maker movement, there is the science community, and the corporate world that are doing the R&D, and the startups world, and we just need to be aware that what we can do, what we cannot do, and so being able to say this cannot be done using a startup approach is very important. And because otherwise it's going to take you on the path of capitalism, and you're just going to lose yourself. And so I think that's going to be the main point. And being able to act as a global community, being able to say this is not about me being the first or being the most efficient, but at the end being able to share my ideas and what I do, so that we have a solution that works and work fast, as fast as possible, is the most important.
Peter, I'm thinking you might have something to say about this.
Yeah, listen, I think the learnings here across all communities is really important. In the end of the day, you can run simulation, you can have thesis, you can have the academic version of it. The entire world has now been pressed with a universal challenge. And I look at this very simply as COVID-19 is our test run for climate change. If we understand what lessons we've learned from how quickly communities can come together, how human behaviors are impacting decisions, policies, economics, everything we may feel good or bad about right now, this will only be magnified with climate. And I think the amazing success, as you see, with communities coming together, hearing about your lab with 1 million face shields produced, in under 50 days. That's a phenomenal metric. It's so different than what you hear often of, oh, we made 10 masks. We did 100 masks a day. And I really applaud those efforts, but these challenges require scale. And I think those learnings are even what people consider small communities can create massive scale. And that's what we're going to need across all of our future challenges. We will have more pandemics coming. We have hunger coming at scales we haven't seen. This time it'll all be televised and Instagrammed. We're in a world where we can do this, and it's great to hear from everyone, but understand even with the frustrations of the world, we can actually do this at quite large scale with just a bunch of us. Like you said, the 8 million scientists of a almost 8 billion person population. That math doesn't make sense, but somehow we can do it.
Oh, okay, go ahead, Richa.
Yeah, I think from the perspective of India, I wanted to sort of put in that scale is always the first thing that you have to think about, because there are 1.3 billion people over here. So for any effort, I think for us also in the beginning, it was very important to incorporate scale into the whole plan and thought around what we were doing, because 100 masks or 1,000, like the 10,000 thing that we sort of did would not make sense in India because it's not impact. We went for grants and aids and we applied everywhere that we had to, but nobody would give you that grant, because unless you have that kind of skill, the ROI for these grants is not enough, right? So for us, it was super important to think about it from a perspective that we could sustain ourselves because we had to pay rent, and obviously we didn't want to get kicked out. And at the same time, we wanted to share the same thing with everybody else doing it. So when we incorporated the model of 75 cents for a shield, it did incorporate all aspects of utility, administration, food, cost of material, transport, and everything else. So in a way that if you did sell this for 75 cents, you were making, some bits for yourself and the team that you were sustaining. So so the whole idea of scale and sustainability together was incorporated in the whole thought process, which was very important in India, and also the price. So Navi, again, one of our advisors, he keeps saying this, that the best is the enemy of good. And in India, it applies the most, because if we waited for R&D, if we waited for, sort of to think through this and do it, the impact would have been too late, because the way that things were scaling here were very quickly. And even now, the way that we are looking at 100,000 to 200,000 cases, maybe in the next 2 weeks, we might just be more, than the US. So, the dynamics of India is very different from, other parts of the country, other parts of the world. So everything together had to be thought through in the beginning. So I think we just wanted to share all of that with everybody else who could do it, so that they could do this sustainably and at scale, because it was very important from both perspectives.
Thank you so much. As usual, we have run out of time. This is so sad because it's a wonderful conversation, and I so appreciate all of you. We all appreciate your telling your story and sharing your time and your innovations with us, right? So with that, we'll end the community action session. And I'd like to remind everybody that you should stick around, because after this short break, we're going to have Fabercise, as well as the Fabworld Roundup, sponsor activities, and some terrific workshops this afternoon. And please do join us tomorrow at the same time for Rebooting Economies. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yay!
Hi guys, this is Suhas from Vigyan Ashram FabLab. Today I am presenting FABxLive with all our Vigyan Ashram team members. So for FABxLive, I selected dance form called as a Barchi dance. So Barchi is an Indian traditional freestyle dance form. So these sticks are called as a Barchi. And for background music, we are playing this Tasha and Do. So let's start with steps. So for doing this dance form, you have to select 3 virtual points. So this one is a point 1, then point 2, and then point 3. So keep at least 1 feet distance in between these 3 points, and just stand on extreme left point first of all, and then do like this. Here at middle point you have to clap at downside, and at third point you have to clap at upper side. Again just turn it out and then clap on downside and then again upper side. Yes. Good. So let's start with the second step. So in this step, I'm having my partner Ganesh along. So in this step, you have to do same action like first step, but in opposite direction. So Ganesh will go on that side. I'm going on this side. So let's start with steps. So, yeah. Okay, good. So let's start with third step. So in this step, you have to do same action, but now Ganesh will go on back side and I am going on front side. So let's start.
Sorry, we also have technical difficulties here. So, but I hope you could relax a little bit and have a little exercise. But now it's also time to see what the network has showcased you throughout the year. This is the space that we have created, I think 2 years ago or something like that. That's called Fabworld, where we have the opportunity to get a little update, I would say, of what the network has been up to, especially related to new labs, COVID activities, projects. So we invite you to lay back, get a nice comfortable chair, and sit down and relax for a chunk of 20-minute videos where we will definitely get an update from the network. So here we go with Fabworld.
Hi, Fab crew. I'm really happy to be here at FABxLive event presenting one of my latest projects. It's called Observatorio Maker, or in English, Maker Observatory. Maker Observatory is a platform, it's a website where we plan to share information and data around Fab Labs, makers, maker movement, maker ecosystem, and all things related to makers in general. So far, there is a lot of information hanging around, reports, data sets, but there is not a single place where you can find some reference. So here in this website, we're planning to offer some report and publications, data set, also information about social network, about what's going on here in the ecosystem. This is a project I have been developing for the last year with David Cuartielles. And this was focused on narrating the story of Spain initially, where we kind of tackle around 450 data points where we just say, okay, when was this Fab Lab open? How do we know it? Where is the reference? Where is the information? So we're trying just to tackle all this information in a structured way on the website, and we are opening it up for the people just to check, to see, to analyze, to reflect, and yeah, mostly to learn about what's going on this Maker and Fab Lab ecosystem. It's really exciting for me just to announce that our publication will be released really soon. We have so far this website that you can access just at observatoriomaker.cc, and we will invite the community just to research and to share this journey, trying to bring some light to what's going on the Maker and Fab Lab ecosystem. So if you want to know more, just get in touch with me. You can find me at La Hora Maker on social network like Twitter, Instagram, and I'll be happy just to connect with you. Yeah, I hope you are enjoying FABxLive, and I hope we can meet again in person and discuss and talk together about all these exciting topics. See you soon. Let's get in touch.
Hello everyone. My name is Antonio, and I am Fab instructor and lab coordinator at OpenDot in Milan, Italy. During the COVID-19 pandemic, I was amazed by how many people from the Fab Lab network and the maker community contributed with their tools, skills, and efforts in helping society moving forward. Brilliant projects and inspiring solutions came alive overnight, and many labs went nosedive on a full-time binge making. Through this collaborative effort, the whole network was able to assist, help, and save people in a situation of emergency, in ways the state and private business were not able to reach. This was the so-called C plan, and it was the best expression of our community in years. At OpenDot, we've seen the COVID-19 crisis as the chance to exploit the potential of the websites carables.org and welder.app. These websites are part of the European project Made for You, which sees the collaboration of many international partners, including us. Through Carables, we promote stories, resources, good practices, and projects related to healthcare and digital fabrication. And Welder is the online repository system we use to host and share those projects. During the recent lockdown, at OpenDot we realized that more than ever the maker community needed a common place to document, share and collect projects and experiments. That's what we did with Welder, by posting and promoting the most useful and maker-friendly projects related to the COVID-19 response. At a certain point, I realized I wanted to share the same projects outside the Welder domain, and I did so by using its API service on other websites that are part of our network, such as Make in Italy and Tech4Care. It was not that tricky. All I did was to set up a PHP script to make an API call and retrieve those projects according to a precise set of tags. If you want to do the same, I invite you to check this link. In here, you'll learn how to document your projects on Welder and how to share them to other websites according to specific tags or the user profile. In case you have more questions or suggestions on how to use these tools, please let us know on our FabCare forum on Wikifactory. Thank you for watching.
أنا سويت بالكيلو كذا طلع شيء أحمر. الكهرباء حطيناه من الأسنان الكهرباء. إيه سوينا الكيكة الجو حق ماما. أحب كل الكلاسز، أحبهم كلهم. الرحلة الآيس كريم اللي كان يتلف، كنت أحسب إنه الناس يلفوه مو الماكينة. يعني اليوم سوينا نص نسوي زي الفيلم قصير، واليوم سوينا الشخصيات حقتها. والله عجبني كلهم، لكن العلوم حبيت، التجارب كانت حلوة، والفيديو كان حلو بعد، كلهم كانوا حلوين. الحين صرنا بالآيبادات. أول شيء سوينا متاهة، كنا نبي نحلها. صرنا اليد اللي يتحرك، كاردبورد وخيط ومزاز ومقص. هذه يعني إذا مثلا تبي تمسك شيء بعيد يمديك تجيب اليد وتمسكها وبعدين يعني ترجعها لك عشان تاخذها بسهولة. عجبتني مرة لأن يعني أبيها تكون أكثر. محمد عبد العزيز لازم نزعلها. صنعنا فانوس، طالع نفتحها ونشوف عدل. أحلى شيء كله عشان ما أعرف إيش أختار. أنا عجبني الروبوت. اللي سوينا له اختراعات. نسوي بركان. أكثر شيء عجبني هذاك القلم لأنه يرسم لنا أشياء. أكثر شيء عجبني إن سوينا اليد وإن تساعدنا يعني نمسك الأشياء. حطينا ملح وطحين وزيت وموية، بعدين صار عجين قبل ما نحط الألوان. بعدين يوم حطينا الألوان حطينا موية شوية. بعدين صار زي البلايدو. هذا يرسم ويمشي، وهذا الشيء صغير يخليها يرسم بشيء مجنون. وفي اكتيفيتي يعني كثير، ويعني ما استعجلوا فينا، وتعرفنا على بعض.
The image of a global community of creatives sharing their ideas online tells the story of people designing and making products today. A global community of designers, engineers, fabricators that's growing around the world. Join the global community on Wikifactory. Working in design studios, startups, fab labs, makerspaces, in schools, universities and libraries, in major cities to the middle of nowhere. With just a simple set of digital fabrication tools and a laptop, they are making telescopes to drones, educational robots to furniture, medical devices to farming kits. Learn from hundreds of projects that, thanks to their creators, are complete with all the files and documentation for you to get started. Get recognized for your expertise. Put your knowledge and skills to practice in projects with a social and environmental impact. Build a community around your new product that can help you accelerate. You can get involved today.
Hello, FABxLive attendees. Recently, blue-collar jobs have become digital new-collar jobs that require the kinds of skills that we do in Fab Labs. A group of Fab Labs, maker spaces, and colleges and high schools have recently come together in order to create a new-collar network in order to develop those skills more completely. Our group is really a collaboration between industry and academia. Our board of directors includes people from IBM, Exponential Works, Trump Laser, and a number of other companies and experienced industry leaders who are able to give us direction in terms of what is needed for today's and the future of work. Our collaborators include America Makes, who funded our first programs, the Youngstown State University Workforce Accelerator in IT, the Urban Institute, and a group of other wonderful organizations and institutes and nonprofits and schools that have really helped us with understanding what needs to be done in order to meet the future. Our first program is a digital badge program that is a type of micro certification and allows us to provide skill-specific training that is short in duration and low in cost. It's all project-based learning, like everything that we do in the Fab Lab network, and we really think makes a difference in terms of helping people find career paths, but also supplement their educational, lifelong learning pathways to all kinds of great adventures in digital fabrication. Our second program is with the U.S. Department of Labor, and it's a registered apprenticeship in additive manufacturing that we plan to have launched in the fall. We expect that we'll be able to start this in our lab in Santa Fe, New Mexico at Fab Lab Hub, and then expand it through the country, and then add other apprenticeships in digital fabrication and photonics. We're also looking at, through these programs, of creating a sort of a LinkedIn for new collar jobs, and to be able to connect the people who do the great work in Fab Labs with employers and with other institutions that can advance both their careers and their educational experiences. To learn more, we're doing a workshop on July 28th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and you can sign in to join us. And I hope that you will be able to learn more about these wonderful opportunities in order to expand FabLab work into career workforce training. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, this is Abhijit. Greetings from India. I'm glad to connect with you virtually today. Today, we're presenting our latest innovation in the digital education space, Ekatra, an integrated education platform for underserved learners. While this pandemic situation has started, we saw that there has been a digital divide between students who are able to connect to the internet to take their virtual classes. However, we saw that a majority of students are unable to do so. That's why we built this. This is how the content looks to a student over SMS and WhatsApp, which is asynchronous in nature. We can then host a conference call over the audio bridge, which helps the students raise their queries to the educators and get them solved. Our system currently provides a one-click learning mechanism for educators across the globe. We'd like to partner with you to leverage this technology to reach the students in the remotest parts of your villages, cities, or countries, and not let them miss out the most important part of their childhood, learning. Let us not allow this pandemic situation to beat us down, but realize the potential of these technologies to reach the most disadvantaged communities around us. I look forward to meeting you sometime soon. Take care. Sometime soon. Take care.
So we hope that you have enjoyed our Fabworld session and that you have seen the different projects. This is going to happen as well tomorrow and the following days. So stay tuned. It's very wonderful that we had all these contributions from you and that you can show us and you can communicate the projects with all of the network. Now we are continuing to the general announcements of the day. We will announce first our 3 current running challenges. So the first one is the Symbio Creation Challenge. It's actually a different concept of a challenge where everybody is a winner. It has been running since 1 week ago now, and we invite you all to join. It's led by the FabLab network. It's not a competition. Check it out, go on the Mighty Networks platform and then join the sessions that they're organizing. We also have the Social Distancing Challenge, where we already have around 12 proposals that they are posted in the chat of under the topic of social distancing. And we already had our first call with the first draft ideas. I remind you that it's still time that you can participate. It's not about bringing so much like solutions, but it's more about being a kid and imagining how would you make a future about distancing, physical distancing. So we want fun ideas, fun proposals, quick prototypes, and we are grateful from Fab Foundation that is going to donate 3 Brothers sewing machines to the ones that they will, to the winners that will be announced on Friday. So take a chance and imagine, be crazy, and bring your solutions under our chat of Social Distancing Challenge. We will be responding to you. We already tuned some proposals, so we can't wait to hear more. And then the third challenge that we are running, it's the challenge Makeathon, organized by Makers for Good together with Wikifactory. And they have also many sessions and a mentorship that you can follow, and many gifts again under the topic of challenges. So this is for the challenges of today, that they are running until the end of the week. Get your hands dirty, and let's move to see the program of today. So today we have a lot of workshops happening. We already had morning sessions. Around 150 participants participated in our morning sessions. And we would like to invite you to participate in the sessions afterwards. Don't forget to register in order that you receive the password to enter the Zoom room. Also, I would like to remind you that this conference is also made in the honor of our friend Fiore, and we made a special website for him so that you can post your memories on the wall of the Bit Ninja. And also under this topic, I would like to raise a little bit more your awareness, because Fiore was a pillar of the FabLab network, and he was doing the work of 10 people under web development, community making, programs development. So I would like to communicate with you that his goals were to grow the programs of under Academy. We would like to have further conversation with every one of you that would like to implement more Academy programs and make this network go even bigger. Now we have been online teaching and distributed manufacturing for many, many years. Now that the world is heading towards that, it's a moment for us to step in and show our experience. And also, I would like to remind you that as he was doing the work of 10 people, we would like to know and identify which are the people from the network that they can contribute in web development. So if you go on your profile on our community platform, then you can set your profile and set your expertise, so we can start like talking with you about different projects that Fiore had in mind. Saying that, I had the speech to Norella, so that she will introduce you to the sessions coming up, and don't forget to register for our workshops.
Thank you, Anastasia. And yeah, as Anastasia was saying, make sure you register in advance, you check all the activities that we have. We have a ton of things going on, so make sure you don't miss whatever you are looking for. We want to invite you now, right after this, we have our collaborator sessions, where you will be able to chat one-on-one and know more about the activities that are going on, and how they are collaborating with the network. Yeah, so we want to thank all of our sponsors, basically Chevron, Forest CNC, Brother, the Solve System SolidWorks, and 3D Experience Lab, that they have been incredible supporters of this network for, I think, a couple of years now. And every day we have a mix of sponsor sessions. So here we have today the Chevron Award. So if you want to learn more about what the Chevron Award this year, is not going to be in the event, but it's going to start in the event and then it's going to move forward. And Brother has a couple of demos that they would like to showcase with you. So it's basically just after this, you can join the session, register on the Mighty, and get the Zoom link and password. Now, for the past few years, Chevron has awarded, and as I was saying before, the teachers in STEM in the network. So today they're going to sponsor a session where they will be announcing the STEM award of this year. In addition, this year they did a Teacher Innovation Award that already was granted. Here you can see who were the winners and who had the incredible opportunity to participate on this. This was a call made back, I think, in April something like that. So these were the winners, and they are going to now move forward into the Chevron Award that they normally do, but we're going to do this today. So if you are interested in that, especially for teachers and innovators, you're welcome to join them. Also don't forget that this is something made by the community and for the community. I think this is not about like giving money to us, the team that it's behind. It's more about how with that that you can contribute, we can make more for you. This is made by the community and for the community, and I want to be super emphasize on that. As you make a contribution, you're basically contributing for the network and for this amazing event to move on. And so you, I don't know, so I would really invite you to be part of the sessions this afternoon. The sessions of this afternoon, don't miss them. Take into consideration that we are moving in between platforms, so don't get like a little confused on that. So don't get confused. So it's basically YouTube in one first of the session of your day, and then moving into Zoom. So that's how we do it. And the community platform, I think it's a space where you will be able to be part of the conversation. Is the hallway. We want you to understand that our community platform this year is becoming basically the venue place where we can all chat, interact. You can have one-on-one conversations. You can also have group conversations if you belong to a specific group. So making sure that you are part of that will definitely contribute to a better experience of you during this event. So stay tuned for the platform. We are more, I think, we have registered people. We have 2,000 registers on the platform so far. So those are the people that are interested to be part of this. So we welcome you to be part of that, to communicate through that. WhatsApp groups, yeah, they do run, but here it's going to be just concentrated on the event. So make sure you are on there and that you can be part of the conversation. Watch our shows in the morning or in the night or in the evening, wherever you are in the world, because we're in so many different time zones that it's hard to keep up where you are, but we're conscious of that. And that's hopefully if you don't get the chance to watch it live, you can definitely go back and watch it in your own time. So I think that's all for today.